Do you want to have control over your career? Do you want to be a high achiever and have even a more fulfilling, rewarding, and progressive career life? You will, because you can. I am Karen Olege, a career strategist and coach. Welcome to Career Growth with Karen, where we empower ourselves to being high achievers in our careers, whether it's in employment or in business. Please subscribe to this channel, like and share the content, and even comment below. Engage with me on my social media platforms, Career Growth with Karen on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Karen Olege on LinkedIn. Let's get started. This is Career Growth with Karen. So today's topic is how to deal with toxic bosses. Actually, I have received a lot of requests from many of you, many of my friends and my connections, many people talking to me about toxic bosses. And toxic bosses do exist. So today I just want to give you a few tips on how to deal with toxic bosses. But even as we go through this, of course, these bosses are different. Toxic bosses are different. So you may need to understand your boss more to be able to know how to deal with them. But I'm gonna give you just a few tips on how you can go about dealing with a toxic boss. So first of all, one tip that I would give you is to understand, but do not excuse their behavior. Understand where they are coming from. So why is your boss toxic? There must be a reason as to why they are behaving the way they are behaving. And understanding them just helps you to control your reactions and manage how you feel about them, and to help you not to take it personally. Because sometimes your boss is having their own frustrations in their own life, in their family, in, any other aspect of their life. Maybe it's even their health or their finances that are not working well, and they are spilling over that frustration into their office, and that is affecting you. So one thing you need to do is to understand where that is coming from, and understanding will help you to have empathy, being empathetic towards that boss who is seemingly being toxic, and to help you to control your reactions and not to take it personally. What I learned, I once had a boss that I would have called toxic, but I understood that her behavior was not necessarily towards me, it was towards everyone, and that helped me not to take it personally. I came to understand that this is how this person is, this is how they behave towards everyone, and therefore I do not take it personally. It's not a reflection of who I am, it's more a reflection of who they are. The second thing that you need to do is to protect your self-worth, protect your self-esteem, protect your self-confidence, and just cultivate a certain personal care or self-care around you. And what do I mean by this? Usually when a boss is toxic, they undermine you, they bring you down. Even the things that are your strengths and the things that you're good at, they do not recognize them, and it may actually, you may end up feeling worthless, feeling your esteem being tampered with. You don't have self-confidence, you don't believe in yourself because your boss is constantly talking down to you. Now you need to protect that. You need to protect yourself from those feelings of negative self-esteem and negative self-worth because of what they are saying. And this is coming from our first point. I've already told you not to take it personally and understand where their frustrations are coming from. This is not about you. So always remember, it's not about you, and protect your self-esteem. Do not allow your self-worth to be undermined simply by the fact that you are with a toxic work boss. Also, another bit of taking care of your personal space is making other connections in the workplace of people who value you, people who value your work, people who motivate you, people who recognize your efforts, so that you're not only listening to the negative bit about you, but you're also hearing from other people what is great about you, what is positive about you. Make other connections in the workplace so that you can safeguard your self-esteem and your self-worth. The other thing that you need to do when dealing with a toxic boss is be very clear on your performance objectives. Now, performance is one area that your toxic boss can really pin you down on. They can constantly tell you you're not performing well, you're not meeting expectations, you're not doing the work that you are supposed to do, you're not meeting deadlines, and so on and so forth. So how do you protect yourself from this? Be very clear with your performance objectives. And what I mean by this is, during your goal setting, make sure you have set very smart goals. And I think I'll do another episode on how you can set smart goals. Be the person who sets SMART goals, document your goals, make your goals very objective. For example, when you're talking about, I will increase this, I will increase efficiency here, I will do this, make your goals very measurable in quantitative terms. And this will help you so that you're not being subjective at the time of review. Your boss is not being subjective. You had very succinct objectives. You are very clear on what you are going to achieve and the timelines. And then now, when you're working towards that and when you're achieving your goals, your boss can now not say that you're not a good performer. You can go back to your objectives and say, no, we had agreed that I will increase sales by 10% and I have done that. We agreed that I will do this trading by June of 2023 and I have done that. Very clear goals, which force your boss, they force your toxic boss to be in the environment of objectivity whenever they are reviewing your goals. If you don't set goals at all, if you leave your goals open-ended, this boss has room to tamper with your performance and start to say you did not perform, you did not meet the expectations, because in the first place you didn't even set clear goals and you have no way of defending yourself. The other thing that you need to do is to be in the habit of documenting. Document everything. Document all your conversations. Document the performance goals. Document each and every feedback that your boss gives you. What do I mean? For example, when you go and have a verbal conversation with your boss and you agree on a certain deliverable or certain timelines with the client, go back and write an email and say, hi boss, as discussed, not hi boss, but hi whomever they are, John or Peter, as discussed, I will be able to achieve this and this and this and this in this timeline, and this is what I am doing. The next step or the next action you're expecting from me is this, and I'll be able to deliver this by this time. Just summarize your conversation in an email, and this protects you in the event your boss starts to change goalposts, because sometimes you agree with your boss on a certain timeline or deadline, and then they come around and they start shoving you around and they start saying, why is this work not already done, and they start throwing you under the bus. So always be in the habit of documenting all your conversations in an email. Similarly, when you set performance objectives, document that. Once you have agreed verbally, document those goals and actually send them to you or send them to the boss and tell them, this is what we have agreed on. I'm happy for our meeting. I'm happy for all the insights that you've given me, and following that meeting, I would just like to share my goals with you as we have agreed. Just have a way of documenting everything that you do. It will really protect you when your boss starts changing what they are saying and they start setting you up against HR, against the more senior bosses. You can always pull out an email and say, no, this is what we had agreed. This is what we agreed last week. This is what we agreed last month. And you can have evidence as to the things that you had agreed. Because one characteristic of toxic bosses is that they just like changing. They have double speak. They say this and then tomorrow they are telling you another thing, or they are telling the senior managers another thing, and they are throwing you under the bus. So the documentation will really assist you. All deliverables, all outcomes, all conversations, every feedback, make sure that you have documented it in an email. The other thing that you need to do is to give feedback if possible. Give feedback to your boss if possible. Guys, I have said if possible. And this feedback, it's not just to your boss. You can give to any other person that you feel may help. For example, if you feel that your boss may be receptive to feedback, you can tell them. You can tell them how this makes you feel. And you don't have to go and say you are a toxic boss. You go and tell them, I find that you're very sometimes when you talk to me, I feel as though it's a confrontation. I feel sometimes the words are a bit too harsh. I would wish that you would be kinder or more polite when you're giving me this kind of feedback or that kind of feedback, or tell them I feel that like you don't give me sufficient instructions whenever you give me a task. So once I have delivered, most of the time I have to come around again and start redoing the work because of instructions that I probably missed at the beginning. But when you're doing this, be very sure that your boss is receptive. If you know that your boss is not going to be receptive to this kind of feedback, and most of the time they are not, try to use other roundabout ways of doing that. For example, you can give that feedback to your HR only if you feel your HR can act on that feedback, only after you have assessed that your HR can act on that feedback. You can also give that feedback to any other, maybe their boss, the boss of your boss, if you have a good relationship with them and you feel like they can be receptive to that feedback and they can act on it. Do not give this feedback to someone who cannot act on it. For example, somebody who is more junior to the boss, even someone in HR who is at a more junior level to that boss. Sometimes there's a friend who reached out to me telling me that their boss has those toxic tendencies, but this is an audit firm and this boss is a partner. So even when you go and tell HR, the HR is junior to the partner in terms of ranking, and they may not be able to act on the feedback. So only give feedback if you feel like, number one, you have a good relation or a good rapport with the person you're giving feedback to, and secondly, that person can act on that feedback. Otherwise, if they can't act on the feedback, that is just gossip. They can only listen, but they cannot do anything about it. But that one is a very tricky one. You really need to assess before you go into giving feedback. You really need to assess. The other thing that you need to do is to learn and adapt. Unfortunately, toxic bosses exist. You will have to deal with them almost everywhere. Every workplace has a toxic boss. You cannot wish them away. So another thing that you may unfortunately need to do is to learn and to adapt. Learning and adapting means get to understand their communication styles, get to understand their leadership styles, get to know how they want the work done, and try to work the way they like, adapt to their working style. Maybe their communication style is one way. They like to talk to you and not to have a conversation. So you may need to adapt to certain ways of working. You may need to adapt to certain ways of leadership. You may need to adapt to maybe their dictatorial nature and all of that. Just learn and adapt and understand, how can I be able to work with them in this environment with the way they are. And this is especially where you cannot give feedback, they cannot have the chance to improve, and therefore you decide to work on yourself, to learn and to adapt to their styles of working while setting boundaries. You set the relevant boundaries while doing that. For example, this is not, I know in my previous episodes I have talked about networking in the workplace. I've talked about going for coffees and lunches with your managers, but a toxic boss is the kind you want to set a boundary. You don't want to get into your personal life with this person. You want to keep it professional. You want to have boundaries as to when they give you work. For example, if you feel like they infringe into your working hours, you want to set boundaries around your working time, your working hours. You even want to switch off your phone after 5 so that they don't reach out to you, or to block them after 5 and then unblock them at 8 the following morning. You may need to set certain boundaries to deal with the toxic boss who infringes on your personal space. But learning and adapting is the unfortunate thing that you may need to do. And finally, you need to make a decision on whether to stay with that boss or to leave that boss. This is not me telling you leave. Actually, I can only say leave that workplace or leave that boss if it's really impacting your mental health or it's affecting other areas of your life. For example, you're now generally an unhappy person because of your toxic boss. Every day you go home, you're just pouring now your work frustrations on your family, your children, your husband. People cannot have, your husband or your wife, people can't have peace at home because you are dealing with frustrations in the workplace. At that point, I would say, honestly, it's getting to the point where you should leave. But if it hasn't affected your mental health and you're able to set clear boundaries, you're able to protect your personal space, your self-esteem and your self-worth, I would advise you to make the decision to stay, but learn and adapt as you look for another workplace. But what have I just said? Toxic bosses exist everywhere. So it's not really you running away from them, but you need to understand and to learn how to be able to work with the toxic boss and adapt to the situation. I hope these tips are helpful. I hope you have learned something from that video. So should you be dealing with a toxic boss, please comment down below and tell us what are some of the strategies that you have used to deal with them. What can you add? What are your comments about the tips that I have given you? Have you ever tried any of them, and have they worked or have they not worked? Let us know. And also let us know what else you would like for me to be discussing in this channel, Career Growth with Karen. Until next time, see you soon. Please subscribe to this channel, like the content, share, comment below, and remember to follow me on my social media channels. Bye.